following podcast is recorded and produced by the Podcast Precinct in affiliation with the network at bicbp-radio.com. The Podcast Precinct. Consistency, creativity, culture.
Hello and welcome to the Sci-Fi Update. I'm your host, Tony Harper. This week's episode, I'm going to finally do the Comic-Con episode I've been promising for a while. I went to Comic-Con nearly a month ago. I'll have some audio recordings and clips from at least William Shatner's speech. I didn't really interview people there. I ended up becoming a little shy for some reason and decided not to interview people there. And one other thing. There was going to be, I'm just going to talk about my experience there at Comic-Con. I've been going to the Niagara Falls Comic-Con for several years. I mean, except for the 1 year the COVID shut it down completely. Actually ended up being almost 2 years since I went last. But I always enjoy going to the Comic-Con. And it's a good, it's a good time. All right, so to begin with, I'm only recording this about 3 days since my last one, 2 days since my last one. So there hasn't been a whole lot of news that dropped. There was a couple of news stories that came out. One is Star Wars Visions received an Emmy nomination, which is cool. And the Book of Boba Fett received 4 Emmy nominations, and I'm sort of disappointed. Book of Boba Fett was not the best work I think Disney has done with the Star Wars franchise so far. It's not bad, but it wasn't really at the level of where I expected it to be. And then trying to turn Boba Fett into, I don't know, this non-dictatorial leader of the old Jabba the Hutt kingdom thing, I just didn't really resonate with me very well. So I would have rathered a couple other shows got some Emmy nods instead, or even Visions got a few more Emmy nods, because Visions was really well done. And then the last thing that really released, came out was NASA has been releasing a lot of pictures from the James Webb Telescope. With that, they released some other pictures that were taken by Hubble and a couple other things, and the Expanse has now been trending recently because the aurora in Jupiter looks like the proto-molecule from the Expanse. When you actually see the picture from Hubble, you'll see what looks like a proto-molecule aurora around the North Pole of Jupiter, and it's really kind of a cool-looking image. If you get a chance, check it out. I will put it onto the video if you're watching this on YouTube. And then the Harper Rave today was going to be kind of about Comic-Cons. I liked my experience so far with some of the Comic-Cons I've done. Granted, I haven't even done a big Comic-Con yet. The one I usually go to is the Niagara Falls Comic-Con, which usually over the 3 days gets about 70,000 people there. Not like the San Francisco or the New York City Comic-Cons, which will have 150,000 people there a day, if not more, and they run for 3, 4, 5 days. So much bigger things there. But Comic-Con itself is a great place in a lot of respects. The thing that really kind of disappoints me is how much money you really have to spend on the actors' autographs and all that kind of stuff. Don't get me wrong. I understand we're actually supporting the actor this way, and you have to have cash, which also disappoints me because a lot of times if I would have bought a few more things if I had some credit, but it might have gotten myself into trouble if I was allowed to use credit at the con for the actors' autographs. But even though pictures like this one with me and William Shatner were about $150 just to get a picture. And in between me and him is a glass plate. I mean, granted, Shatner's 91 at this point in time, so he's probably doing that to protect himself from COVID. And there was only about 1,000 people in the line to get a picture with him. So, you know, it is what it is. But it just seems so expensive to get a chance to interact with some of your favorite stars. And that's what just sort of disappoints me a little bit about Comic-Cons in general. Don't get me wrong, I mean, I like having the chance and I like supporting the actors. I just wish there was another way of doing it. And then the other thing is it kind of makes you feel bad when you see other actors there that didn't get as much love as like William Shatner did. And like the Chips stars were there, and Chips was a 60s, 70s police motorcycle show based in California. And, you know, those actors didn't get a lot of love. Of course, they're also in their 90s, but for some reason don't look as good as William Shatner does, with him being in there. Well, they may be only in their 80s, but I mean, the actors are getting pretty old at this too. Along with like Jonathan Frakes, when I saw him there last time a couple of years ago, kind of surprised me with how much older Jonathan Frakes looked, even though he was in his like 50s or 60s, than what he did when he was playing on Star Trek Next Generation in the 90s. I mean, granted, I was a teenager at that point in time, but he, in the 30 years from when I saw him, not even quite 30 years, I mean, he aged considerably. I know he was in his 30s to begin with, but he looked a lot older on there. And you can see him in Picard and see how much older he looks there. But even Picard made him look a little bit nicer on the TV than what I saw in person. Let's go into Comic-Cons today. So, William Shatner, I talked about him. I'm going to put a clip of part of his speech that he gave while he was there. I recorded the whole thing on a couple different platforms, and I'm going to add part of his speech into both the video and the audio onto this here. And I'm probably going to cut out the guy that asked the question because he kind of rambles a little bit. But basically, he got asked a question, and, well, since you've done all this stuff, is there anything else you want to do? And he was like, listen, I mean, he didn't ask to go into outer space on the Blue Origin thing. He was offered that opportunity, and he was like, sure, I'm going to do that. He talks about swimming with sharks during this thing, and again, it wasn't something he would have gone out of his way to have done, but, you know, somebody offered him a chance to do that, and he was like, sure. I know from my own personal experience, I've had a lot of things that were offered to me in life. And from my own personal experience, I screwed myself from a lot of different high money making adventures, or even just some cool adventures as well, just because I was afraid. And it's one of the things that I'd like to see you guys not be afraid of, is taking that chance. Anyway, here's William Shatner.
Well, I mean, it's like saying, you know, have you had a religious experience or something? You don't know. I'm looking at those falls as a religious experience. So how do I know what I'm missing? But taking the opportunities that are offered me, and it's really quite different. Maybe not unique, but certainly very different for me than it is for you. When somebody calls me and says, "How would you like to swim with the sharks?" Yeah. Oh, really? Swim with the sharks. Okay. And I grasp the opportunity. Like somebody said, "How would you like to go up into space?" So it's a matter of stumbling. What? Did somebody say something out loud? It's a matter of grasping the opportunity, whether it's for me or whether it's for you, of some adventure. So this guy, Josh Gates, who has a program called Adventure or something or other, and he goes off on these adventures. And he called me. He said, "How would you like to go swim with the sharks?" And I thought, well, I've been a deep sea. I've been a diver for many years, and I've seen sharks afar. And everybody, "Oh, it's a shark! It's a shark!" And you get out of the water. I said, "Okay," and I found myself off the shore of the Bahamas with a group of people who spend their lives diving with sharks, take pictures, and the guy, and I'm in my suit with a tank and all, and the guy says, and they're chunning, they're throwing raw fish out for the sharks to be there, so they can attract sharks, so they can film the sharks. And the guy says to me, "Okay, you know how you hop in, you hold your mask, you go in, and you got your lead in the air, lead in the water suit on, whatever, forgot what you call it." And yeah, so you ready, Bill? Go, oh, Bill. The guy says, the head guy says, "Listen, man, see all the sharks swimming here. The most dangerous part of this whole thing, Bill, is when you go in and when you come out. See, because all the sharks there, they're in a frenzy of feeding, so that's very dangerous. So get in as quickly as you possibly can. And when you come out as quickly as you can." And I'm thinking, like you just suggested, why am I here? Is this the adventure? Is this the thing I'm missing most? So I jump in and I avoid the sharks, and I go down 60 feet. And there's a big rock, and they obviously no accident, there's a rock. I sit down on the rock. And there's 4 tiger sharks that they're feeding and filming, and I'm sitting on a rock. And the guy behind me is my guard. Turns out, pushes a shark aside, and he's about to eat the cameraman. I can't believe, when did I say yes to all this? And then I look to my right, and about where that speaker is a lady. Turns out later she's called the Shark Whisperer. And she's surrounded by 5, 6, 7 foot sharks. And she's like going like this. And they're all in chainmail, by the way, which in case the shark bites down on them, the chainmail will take most of the blow. I guess you get crushed, but you don't, your skin isn't punctured. They're all in chainmail except me. And then I see her coming towards me with a shark in her arms. And she comes and she places a 7-foot shark in my lap. And I find myself petting the shark. And because I'm not wearing chainmail gloves, I can feel the shark's body. And it's like a stiff carpet. It's not skin and it's not hair, it's something in between. And I'm feeling a shark's skin, for God's sake. And inadvertently, I poked a finger in the gill of the shark. The shark swam up. And I thought, as much as I know, sharks, if you turn them upside down and pet them, go into something called toxic shock. They faint. I don't know. Why, you can turn me over and pet my stomach. I won't. I might get excited, but I won't faint. Or maybe I'll faint from excitement. At my age, it's possible. So I thought this shark was in toxic shock, but it wasn't. It was in, like you pet your dogs, and the dogs just glow because you're petting and loving them. That's what the sharks were feeling. She brought another shark over, and it was like so mellow. This thing about turning a shark over, I don't know when they discovered it, but they also discovered that orcas will turn a shark upside down, pet it. So, and great whites, they're the great whites are the apex predator in the ocean. The next is the tiger shark. These orcas are like the best of all, because they'll turn a great white over, pet it, it goes into toxic shock, and then they eat its liver. So I thought that's what was happening. It wasn't. These sharks were fainted from love. Then I had to get out. And I was swimming up to the top, and there are all those sharks. And when you get out, you climb stairs. So your backside is to the sharks. And I'm sure I heard a shark say, "Look at that asshole." No, maybe not. Anyway, that's the kind of adventure that I'm offered. And this going into space was another. Would you like to go? Hell yes. And then I thought about the Hindenburg.
Yeah.
Remember the Hindenburg? You see that footage on the Hindenburg? You know, that's the Zeppelin, like a 300-foot lighter than air bag of gas with people living in it, and it went across the ocean. In the late 30s, it was the way to cross from Germany to North America in a Zeppelin. And there was one called the Hindenburg, which was the king of the airways, and it's filled with hydrogen, which is a great lighter than air gas. So it goes to dock in New Jersey. This we find out later, and they lower a rope, a thing to tie off, whether it was rope or metal or whatever, to tie off, like you would a boat, you tie off this thing, anchor it, in essence, on the ground. And apparently, static electricity went up this thing. The Zeppelin, the Hindenburg, was coated in aluminum. And so the static electricity went across this metal surface, and there was a small leak of hydrogen in the back. And it ignited the hydrogen, which is highly inflammable. And the whole Zeppelin, the whole Hindenburg, burst into flames. And there's footage on it, little people running away about the size of this, little people running. And there's an announcer who was announcing this thing, here it is, the Hindenburg. And then the Hindenburg bursts into flame, and the announcer goes, "Oh my God, the humanity of it all." He's screaming, and people are dying because hydrogen is ignited in the Hindenburg. You know what they were filling the rocket that I was going to go in? With hydrogen. Yeah, with hydrogen. They asked me to come a day early. So that Sunday evening, when I was planning over dinner with how to write the song, I was asked to go in on a Monday. Everybody else was coming in on Tuesday. So I went there Monday thinking, why am I here early? So I'm there Monday morning, I'll have a meal, and then they say, well, let's drive to the gantry. And the desert there was at 4,000 feet, which is, like almost a mile high in the air. So we drive to the gantry, and there it is, this thing. And then let's go up the gantry. Okay, let's go up the gantry. It's 11 flights up the gantry at a mile high. Okay. So I'm walking up, and every 3 flights, I'm sucking in air. And I'm stopping, oh, look at the desert, isn't it nice? And then I get to 11 flights, and I'm falling over. And I look at I'm looking at a room about the size of this stage, square. And it's got foot-thick cement walls. And it's a room, and the door is ajar, and I see oxygen tanks, and I see radio and stuff. And what's that? Oh, no, what is it? Well, it's a room that you run into and close that door and use the oxygen in case something goes wrong. What do you mean in case something goes wrong? That's what it was. So I was a little apprehensive about the whole thing. But it was quite a journey, and I came back in grief for the world, and I've been trying to say something about it ever since. Hold on.
And we're back. Now, again, I have some more audio and stuff I might clip into there for William Shatner as part of this podcast here. I may not. It depends on how much time I take to do the rest of this podcast and all that kind of stuff. Again, with this me being solo on here, I find it's a little more difficult for me to talk for longer than 30, 40 minutes about a subject and feel like, I don't know, I'm still giving some kind of good input into it. So let's go into cosplay at Comic-Cons. Listen, if you're going to go to a Comic-Con, that's the only way to go is first off cosplay your favorite character. It is so worth it just to go and see all these people that are cosplaying and being their favorite characters and all that kind of stuff. This last one I did not cosplay. I have cosplayed in the past. This one I did not cosplay because I was more interested in trying to advertise my podcast. So I wore a shirt with my podcast on there. But I got some cool pictures of some people that did some really great cosplay. They had the one guy that was dressed up as a dinosaur, was banging on the windows. I'll show you a little clip of that. And, you know, but on top of that, like, I got a really cool picture of me with this guy that dressed up as Peacemaker. And, like, I don't know if you haven't seen Peacemaker yet on HBO, but it is one of the most hilarious shows. I think it's much better done than even the Anti-Heroes. What's it called? Also on HBO is the DC version of thing with... Oh, I'll come up with it in a second. I'll even put a picture up on the thing there, but it is going to probably drive me insane until I figure this out. Doom Patrol, that's what it was, with the actor from Doom Patrol, the robot, who plays the robot right now? I can't remember his name. Jesus. But he's in all kinds of stuff. Like Encino Man and all kinds of stuff in there. And I think he is not the greatest of actors, but he is a funny actor, and it is enjoyable to watch him. But realistically, Doom Patrol does not hold a candle to Peacemaker. I mean, Peacemaker was so much better done. A lot more enjoyable to watch in some respects. Talks about some very interesting aspects with some very timely non-PC stuff, but I think they take it to that exaggeration to show you like this is just not appropriate any longer, and people would never root for this guy to begin with because he's such an Peacemaker's father is such an asshole. All right, and then on top of it, you know, spend a lot of time looking at all the vendors and all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of cool stuff you can get at Comic-Cons. I do know for the California Comic-Con, the one in San Francisco, they offered that Robot Optimus Prime. And if you haven't watched my Robot Optimus Prime video, here's a little bit of a clip. Hey, Optimus Prime.
Greetings.
Transform. So as you can see, the Optimus Prime here is fully voice enabled to transform. It has a lot of different voice enabled features. And in that video, you can see how this robot, voice activated, is able to just transform. It is one of the coolest things by Roboson Robotics. And if you got the money, and it's not cheap, I would highly suggest you get that. But on top of that, vendor stuff, there's a lot of cool, just collectible stuff that you would have a hard time finding anywhere. I know we took several pictures, or got several pictures and posters. My kids get all their posters for the walls from the Comic-Con. It is well worth going, but expect to drop a lot of money at a Comic-Con when you go. Not just in the tickets. The tickets generally aren't too bad. I mean, the Niagara Falls Comic-Con, I think, was about $40 a person when we bought them, because my kids are now old enough to be treated as adults. So all of them are $40 a person. And you can just see some cool stuff. Like, I got a picture of me with the Kit car. I got some pictures of, like, the Scooby-Doo van. There's a lot of cool Star Wars stuff. Here's a quick clip of those guys that were doing medieval armor fighting. And it's just a lot of things like that are just really interesting, really cool. Some unique experiences you won't get anywhere else. And then you got other things there. There are sometimes, like, the couple of colleges go to the Niagara Falls Comic-Con to advertise both their work with studios and how to get into doing that kind of stuff. If you're interested in doing either the animation or the drawing or the post-production, the sound, the audio, all that kind of stuff. A lot of the schools do there, and they do a lot of the VR stuff and a lot of that stuff that you can do there, and it's a really cool setup. So, you know, this is kind of my thing on the Comic-Con itself. I hope you enjoy all the pictures. And again, if you really like this show, give me some kind of comments on Facebook. Don't give me combat. I mean, I have enough of my friends that want to argue with me over every little thing. And I do plan on having guests onto the show again. And when I do have a guest on here, it will be longer. But like I said, it's unfair to my friends to expect them to show up all the time. And I've been trying to get them to show up, but it's just timing with everything. It's just hard to do. Again, like, share, subscribe. If you have liked it in the past or followed me in the past, unfollow and then refollow me. It helps with a whole bunch of the algorithms and that kind of stuff. And again, peace out.
Actually, coming from Southern California, and just before I came on, I'm reading an article about the drought in Los Angeles, where they're rationing water where I am, to sprinkling your lawns once a week for a limited amount of time. And the sun there is a lot hotter than it is here. So obviously the grass is going to dry up, and the trees and all that kind of thing. But what I was saying was getting accustomed to something, whether it's your child or something you're eating or how you're feeling, or the majesty of the falls and everything around you, how important it is to keep that inner child who's always like, oh, look at that, what's that, what does that mean? The longer you can, the more you can do that, the more you can retain being in awe of the wonder of the falls. I lived in Toronto for quite a while. I was born in Montreal and went to McGill, and when I graduated McGill, I ended up in summer theater, and then went to Ottawa for what was a professional theater at the time, called the Canadian Repertory Theater, or CRT, and stayed there for a long while and did a play a week. So you'd rehearse a play in the afternoon, do another play at night. A week later, you'd do the play that you were rehearsing, and then start rehearsing another play. It's called Repertory. And then I went on from there to Toronto and the Stratford Festival. In that time, I did a commercial in close to Niagara, and when I come back to Niagara, as I have from time to time, I remember that moment when I shot that commercial. It was like, I mean, usually shooting a movie or commercials, you know, I sit around, God, what are the words, get it, do it again, and it's actually boring until the moment the cameras are going, and then you try to overcome your feeling of boredom. But that afternoon, shooting in southern Ontario, near the Niagara Falls, the commercial was for a grocery store, where you buy your food, and so we were eating food. We were doing steaks. I guess it was the meat market or something. Anyway, there was a long line of people at a barbecue round table cooking a steak. And it was the time of year, and you'll have to tell me when the peaches, when the fruit on the trees were just ripe. So now we're doing a commercial with steaks like early morning or middle of the morning. So when the steaks are going to be done, it's going to be lunch hour. And the fruit was ripe to pick off the trees. I made a commercial in Canada. And of course the steaks, they go, all right, we got burning a steak here, get more. And people would come with more steaks. There'd be this pile of steaks that everybody was going to eat for lunch. It was like, there was no boredom there. It was incredible. Southern Ontario was at its finest, as was the falls and as was the meat. It was a glorious moment. It was so many years ago, and I've never gotten the feeling of the sun and the fruit and the meat and the smell of the meat on a barbecue. Can you imagine what that was like? So that's embedded in my memory of Southern Ontario. Every time I start with the word Southern, the word California starts to appear. Southern Ontario. Anyway, I received just before coming here, the night before last, with Henry Winkler presented me at a large gathering, a Lifetime Achievement Award, and I didn't know who deserves an award for a lifetime? I mean, you do your lifetime. Everybody gets an award for just making it through your lifetime. I mean, this is what I said to the audience, why me? I mean, I did all the things I just said. I went to McGill and got there, and then I went to New York, and then I went to Hollywood, and I said, and here I am. And they applauded. I thought, what are you applauding about? I just sort of blundered my way through it all, and fate took me by the hand and pushed me in direction. And, why do I deserve an award? Was the whole premise of what I was saying. And what I had thought was that keeping alive that inner child, which is what I tried to do, both as I run around trying to do as much as possible, and write these books, which may or may not have any value, but the theme of being aware our lives, that's the achievement. We all live our lives. So I said to them, I guess the only achievement I could point to, as I just said a moment ago, is trying to retain that ability to be in awe of everything around us, of nature, the stars, and the worm, you know. What do I want to tell you? I recently was at the Kennedy Center in the United States, which is bigger than I'm trying to think of Toronto and Massey Hall, bigger than Massey Hall, the Kennedy Center in Washington, and I was asked to entertain there, and this two guys, a guy by the name of Robert Chernow and I, especially Robert, Dan Miller of a group called the Might Be Giants was responsible for some of the music, but Robert and I wrote the lyrics to these songs that are in this album that's out there now called Bill. But we were so enjoying the act of creating these songs, which were based on events in my life. So, for example, that in Bill, the album that's out there, one of the songs that I would point at is me leaving home in Montreal on my way to Toronto. And I'm crossing a bridge, and I've forgotten the bridge, but it must be over the St. Lawrence River. And I'm in this cheap little English car, the little two-door, anyway, Morris Minor. It was a Morris Minor that I had bought, used in Montreal for $400. My father had lent me the money. And I'm driving with all my belongings across the river and the bridge. And an 18-wheeler is coming at me. And that 18-wheeler pushes this envelope of air. And so the air pushed my little Morris Minor almost over the bridge. And in that moment, I thought, God, if I go over the bridge and drown, all my belongings are here. It's like I never existed. I mean, that's how ephemeral all our lives are. But I survived, and the song is about how we all are crossing a bridge, and we all have 18-wheelers coming at us, and that's the name of the song, The Bridge. So we had a number of songs, because of the joy of writing these songs. We had a number of songs left over. And when I was asked to entertain at the Kennedy Center, at a big opera hall, seating 3,000 people, tiers of balconies there. I mean, it was like monumental, and they weren't going to televise it, so I said, I'll pay for the television, and they weren't going to record it with any fidelity. I said, I'll pay for the fidelity recording. So sooner or later, there's going to be a show of me performing live at Kennedy Center, the songs that Chernow and I wrote. And it was the week after Earth Day. Did we have Earth Day here in Canada a few weeks ago? Well, that's when I did it. And 5 of the 6 songs are about the planet and how we're destroying the planet. And by the way, in this speech I gave to getting this award, I said, and one of the questions is, I was saying, you got to keep asking questions. And I said, one of the questions I would ask is, how can we be at war with the planet burning? And so the whole evening was about our joy and our concern about our planet. The last song, which was about distilling my adventure that some of you may know, I went up into space and had an enormous experience far beyond anything that I could have imagined. And I went to the desert on a Monday. On a Sunday evening, Robert Chernow and Dan Miller and I met for dinner. And we said, we gotta write a song about me going into space. So we made some notes. Then on Monday, I went to the desert and had this experience. When I came down, I called Chernow and I said, you know, everything we talked about at dinner on Sunday night about being in space, forget about it. That's nothing to do with what I experienced. And we wrote a song called So Fragile, So Blue, and that was like the key song of that evening at the Kennedy Center. So Fragile, So Blue. We see here with the falls, this water flowing, the bringer of life, water flowing over the falls and being, and water being this magical thing, being solid, ice, water, fluid, water as we know it, and then mist is a gas, water vapor. It's the only thing we know of that has three shapes to it. Water is this bringer of life. We're 80-90% water, and we're running out of it in Southern California, and as well as many other areas are in drought. But here, in this magical place called Southern Ontario, all this water flows over these hills and falls and vaporizes, and I mean, it's magical. And I don't want those of you who live here ever to forget how magical it is. So, listen, I thought this would be like a nice introduction, and we get to know each other. Like, hello, that's who I am. I'm a Canadian still. I'm here among you. I haven't been able to vote ever. But whatever party is in power at the moment, which just changed recently, right? It's a beautiful transition of power by people who are seemingly intent on making Canada better and better. And in the States, it's much more vivid and more warlike. Yeah, in the States, it's democracy in action for sure. Well, you know, democracy is, this is my idea, no, this is my idea. Well, democracy seeks to ameliorate and moderate and vote, and it goes with the majority. And democracy is difficult, and it's warfare, and this is my idea, and I think it's best, and let's not go to war. Like, I don't understand why Southern California doesn't do a tunnel from Oregon or Washington State, and a tunnel to bring water down to it's the darndest thing you've ever seen. But that's democracy in action, and here in Canada, it seems to be working better at the moment than it is in the United States. It's coming back to Canada is a real moment of comfort for me. Back to familiar things and people who are very polite. My goodness, ask me a question, and I'll vamp on that. Do we have a microphone set up? Somebody in black. Wait a minute. Two people in black. Somebody's huddled over there. Where are you going? Is there a microphone here? There's a microphone. There's a man in black. Good. Everybody's in black here. We're in mourning for our youth, I think, is the line. What, you got a telephone?
Yeah.
Oh, you got your question on your telephone.
No, actually, I'll read it.
Why? No, wait a minute.
I'm just
No, don't read it.
I'm not.
No, don't read it. Don't look at your telephone. From